Well, so without further ado, I'm going to welcome our presenters. Just a few housekeeping rules. Please make sure that you are currently on mute. If you do have a question, then feel free to either enter it into the chat and I will ask it for you, or unmute yourself and just go ahead and ask the question. For those that are here with us in person, make sure that you signed in so that I know that you were here. But if you were on Zoom, just drop your first and last name in the chat. And don't forget to drop a 1 through 5 rating at the end so that we can know how well this was applicable to your advocacy. So, all right. Welcome, Miss Amy and Miss Johnny.
Woo! First of all, Johnny is going to do a little exercise with all of you. Those of you that are on Zoom, I know you're not here to actually participate in it, but I would encourage you to do the same thing at home where you are, and really take note of the questions that Johnny asks you. So go, Johnny.
Okay, so I passed out an envelope to you. So I want you to open your envelope. There's 5 strips of paper in there.
The fun part of them. You know.
Okay, so on each strip of paper, I want you to write a different answer. So the first thing I want you to write is your favorite activity, the thing that you do just for you. But I'm pretty loud. Okay, when you get that written, stick it inside your envelope. Okay, the next one is your favorite food prepared by someone else, and who is that someone else? And not the name of a restaurant.
Is it okay if they were not even living in?
Sure. Okay, the next one is your favorite holiday tradition.
We don't have to have a lifetime story.
I know. Okay, the next one is the name of your confidant. Who's that person that you go to when things are tough? Okay. The next one is the name of your siblings. But if you're an only child, someone in your family who you're as close to as a sibling. Now seal up your envelope and put your name on the front.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I think these were blackmail questions of some sort. I probably will.
It's Priscilla put her whole name.
That's so that we know exactly.
There's not another Priscilla in here. There's no other Priscilla that matches you.
That's right. Okay. So now I want you to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine that you've just been removed from CPS. They've come into your house and they have said, oh, you've got to leave. It's not safe here. All the things that you put in your envelope are likely to be lost. No more connections with siblings. Your holiday traditions will look different. As great as our foster homes are, they're not your family, and they're not going to do things the same way that your family did them. So why is that? You can open your eyes now. You don't have to talk with your eyes closed. Why? Don't be sad. Just put it in your heart. So without those family connections, we don't know where we came from. So what can we do for our kids that we work with to ensure that those family connections are not lost?
And that's why we're here today, to talk about that. What a great segue.
All right.
I'm going to start by saying those that are in Zoom land, I would really like to hear from you guys during the presentation today. So, because there's at least 20 of you in Zoom land. And so I really do want to hear everybody's experiences as we talk about this, as well as what your thoughts are moving forward and how you advocate for children. So kinships and connections is what we're going to discuss today. I am not technical.
It's okay.
Do I just try it? There we go. So what is kinship? Does everybody know what Webster is? If we have young people here, they may not know. Didn't used to carry around a dictionary. When I was in elementary school, we had to carry around a dictionary. It was a little bitty. So it was on the school supply list. So what Webster says kinship is the quality or state of being kin. Well, what does kin mean? So when you look up kin, it is defined as a group of persons with common ancestry, a clan, one's relatives. But what is that? What does kinship mean to you? We all have a different idea of what kinship means. And if you're here and if you're participating, then you've worked with our kids in our system. And so what I'd like to hear from you guys is, what does kinship mean to you, both as a person and as an advocate? And I'm not going to do all the talking today. Nobody?
So for me, kinship is my family, the people that I'm related to. And for the kids on the case that I'm on, they are actually all in kinship placements. So their extended family is taking care of them right now.
Okay. Are all of those kinship placements, are they all blood relatives?
They are. Yeah.
They are.
I would say the first one was very lucky because I just finished the case. It was originally 4 children in it. And the first two, went into the ether. And the two youngest ones were placed in at least 5 different placements, all saying they wanted to adopt them, and they came in their mind after the kids had gotten settled there. So that to me is the downside of having a kinship relationship. Is at one point they were placed with a grandmother, and at another point one was placed with a different grandmother, and the other one went to the behavioral health center, which isn't a pleasant place, and the two youngest ones just got shuffled from door to post.
Mm-hmm. But so when we talk about our kids and making connections for them, what does that mean for kinship? Is that necessarily anybody that is blood related? Because when you go back over here, the definition of kinship is a quality or state of being kin. Well, that doesn't mean that you're a blood relative. How many kids have you ever met in your lifetime, not just as a CASA, that have people involved in their life that they call auntie?
Yeah.
Cousins. There's Grandma Betty, and Betty is no relationship, a no blood relative. So we have to look at people outside of just that lineage, that blood relative.
Amy, we have somebody say something from the chat that kinship placement meant about, having roots associated with that.
That's exactly, it does. And that's, that talks about the connections that we're going to be discussing today. It is about forming a relationship, setting roots, because that little activity that Johnny did with y'all, she and I have both done that activity years ago, and we did it a little bit more simple for you today, but it's a good demonstration of what exactly happens to our kids. Everything that they're close to, everything that is important to them, anything and everyone that meant something, they lose in the instant if they don't have kinships. Kinships are our savior for our kids to keep them having connections with their family, with other people that are interested and committed to them and involved. So every one of our kids has a family, and they have a right to be connected to them. Do y'all know that there is in Texas the Children's Bill of Rights? Are you aware also that every single child that is removed by CPS and put into a placement, it doesn't matter what kind of placement it is, the CPS worker has to sit down with the child and go over the entire Bill of Rights, what these children's rights are specifically. If y'all didn't look, it's on the table back there where you signed in. Is a copy. And that is actually the exact same form that CPS uses with your kids. And it doesn't matter if they are 4 or 17 and a half. They have to be discussed. This has to be discussed with them, as well as the children are forced to sign. I shouldn't say forced. That's the wrong word. The children are asked to sign at the back. Even if they're 4, they have to put their own little scribble on. If they're 5, they're asked to try to write their name. But this is discussed with our kids. And as you can see, that looks like if I was 9 and I had a caseworker sit down with me with this and said, hey, we're going to go through all of this. You're entitled to A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I just got placed in a place where I don't know anybody. It's very intimidating because this is government paperwork. This isn't a kid conversation, but it's required actually by law. So part of our Children's Bill of Rights is that they are entitled to live with their siblings. If you have any sibling groups and your kids are separated, it happens all too often. We do not have enough foster homes in Texas to house all of our kids. One of my responsibilities here at CASA is keeping up with numbers and statistics and all that. And I will tell you that the last time I really looked at our number for this specific issue, we had about 40% of our kids that we represent here in our office were placed in kinship placements. 40% of our kids. I would love for it to be higher. So that's something that we have to look at as their advocates, is who's involved with these children. And again, remind your team what your kids' rights are. Siblings. They are required to have the ability to have visits and regular contact with their family, including their siblings. The only thing that hinders that is a court order. So they also have the ability to have visits and contact with people that are outside of their team, outside of the foster care system. The visitors can be, but are not limited, teachers, church members, mentors, old friends. I mean, how many of you have worked a case where a kiddo asked you about an old friend that they had at their old school, like their best friend? If they said, you know, what about Zach? I haven't seen Zach. Zach doesn't know where I am, because they never had the opportunity to have that conversation. They were whisked away and landed somewhere else. So there's no closure. Let's talk about something very, very important. Siblings. I'd like to know from Zoom land, as well as you here, how many cases have you worked where siblings have been placed separately?
One, my current case. And it's sad because the first words out of their mouth when I see them is, I want to be with my brother, both of them.
Right.
And there was a time when we could connect them, but we can't right now. So,
it's very unfortunate. But what do we do? There's, of course, every family is different. Every sibling group is different. We have to approach every family as their own. Who is the expert about that family? Not us, they are. They are the experts on their own family, not us. You have Zoom land.
Yes, so we have some people saying that they have worked 2 cases, 1 case. We have one person who said they have worked 5 cases where they were separated, and other people saying 1.
But this is what's scary, y'all, is like the majority of all of you participating in this today have worked cases where your kids were not together. They were not placed together. They didn't live together. They didn't have meals together. So what do? What should we be doing? We should be making sure that they're having that contact, because let's go back. It's their right. I'm not going to get into a bunch of legal definitions and stuff, but I want you to know that several years ago, our legislature, as well as the federal legislature, decided that children that are in foster care can come back and file a lawsuit against the state that had custody of them if they were denied access to their siblings. A lawsuit. And if your attorney ad litem's haven't heard of that, You might want to share that because so many of our kids are asking for this. We need help facilitating it. So we're going to watch a short video. I thought this was a great explanation of kids that have siblings in care and a little bit about their stories. Oh, Mayor.
It's definitely important for siblings to be placed together. It's just the comfort that you have in another home. Like, you're in someone else's home, you don't feel their home comfort that they feel. Having your sibling next to you is the most comfortable thing that you could have in someone else's house. Just being placed with my brother, it was like really helpful actually. When I needed him, he was always there. He knew what I was going through. I always just had him by my side. You know, we took care of each other. That was just the best part.
My siblings were like, you know, everybody has that person who you trust and who you're close to, and my siblings was the one for me. You know, at that time that I was in foster home and stuff, my siblings were everything to me. You know, they were my world, cause they were just everything. Yeah. I
did have 3 brothers that lived with my father and their mother that I wanted to be a part of their lives. I always asked if there was some way that I could go and see them, and I was repeatedly told no because of the whole dad issue. Them telling me that I couldn't see my brothers just didn't make any sense to me. So it was like, after a while of just being told no, like, I stopped asking and became discouraged. I was just like, okay, maybe one day things will get better, and, you know, when I can age out of the system, I'll seek them out. I would have been a lot more positive and a lot less depressed because I would have felt like I had something to look forward to, and I would have felt that I had additional support, family support. It's different, you know, having support from friends and foster parents and people that are hired to work with you. It's different from having family support. So that's what I really craved.
There's 6 of us. We entered care when I was 5 years old. I have a twin sister, older sister, older brother, little sister, little brother. Having brothers and sisters is like having friends you can never get rid of, and we just had to have it, you know, because you're being, that's it, you're all you got, you know, and especially in that transition of entering into foster care, you feel alone. You don't feel like you belong to that family because you have this label of being a foster child. And I remember the first foster home we got into, I was 5 years old and my little sister was only 1 year old. And being separated from her and her foster parents, they didn't allow us to see her because she was only a baby. That was rough. That was like, it's depressing. You feel hopeless. You feel like you need to be helping them or just making sure that they're okay. And that's probably like one of the worst things that you endure in foster care is not being able to see your brothers and sisters. Because when you're in foster care or when you get separated from your siblings, that responsibility and that, I don't even know the weight that is placed on you as an older sibling to take care and make sure that our siblings are being taken care of is heavy.
I have 3 older siblings. I'm the youngest of 4. The toughest thing would probably have to be me being separated from my siblings and not being able to keep in touch with them. I think it's so essential for us to be together. When we enter foster care, we lose everything. You know, we lose our family, we lose, you know, our moms, our dads, where we lived. Everything is just so unfamiliar. And to have your siblings there is probably what you need, you know, in order for you to move on or to move forward in life or in foster care. You know, how can you tell someone that's just been taken away from the family, or you can't talk to your sister, you can't talk to your brother, you can't call them, you know, like little things like that. It's just like, it devastated me. Well, there were things we did, you know, in order for us to be with each other. I mean, we've run away. We lived on the beach for over a year. I was 13, my sister was 14, my brother was 15. You know, you can't tell someone you can't, you know, be with your brothers and sisters, especially if you're going through such a hard time like that. In my life, that was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Just things like, even like taking a shower, like we go days without taking like a warm shower, having food, and you know, just we run into people and we've gone through things that, you know, no one should ever go through. So when we were in foster care, when we first entered foster care, social workers didn't want to tell us anything, you know, about what was going on with my other siblings. My sister, she was 14. She had her first abortion. No one told us. She was hospitalized for several months in a treatment center because she was so depressed, and just the fact that I could have been there for my sister. Maybe she didn't have to go through that depression of, you know, not having anybody. It really hurts me.
It would help you because you would have less behavioral problems. The behavior stems from us being separated from our brothers and sisters, us not being allowed. That's where the behavior issues come up. That's why we have so many runaways. It's because you're not allowing us, then we're gonna make it happen. We're gonna be connected to our brothers and sisters regardless. As a professional, if you want your job to be smoother, then you're gonna let us stay connected to our Ohana. If not, you're gonna have problems. You're gonna have us getting suspended from school for fighting because we're frustrated, because we're stressed out. We're gonna have academic problems because we have the burdens of our brothers and sisters on our minds. We're stressed out. If we cannot be connected and know that our brothers and sisters are safe, that they're okay, you know, there's gonna be issues.
Of course we want to be with our siblings, but sometimes if you have like maybe 5 sisters or brothers, you cannot all be placed in the same home. I also understand that. That is why we have, you know, we recommend, like, if the child enters foster care, we ask that they at least be placed in the same home, the same district, so that they're allowed to go to the same schools, or they have frequent visits at least once a month, or be able to call each other or write letters. I don't think that our care providers, or sometimes as social workers, they don't understand the importance of it, like, to us, what it means to us. So I think if we gave them a better understanding, then they would probably be motivated to, you know, do more in order for us to be together or to keep in touch. I just asked, you know, to put themselves in our shoes. How would you feel if you couldn't see your family, if you couldn't see your brothers and sisters?
So what y'all think of what those kids had to say?
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
From the kids.
I'm not trying to play it again because nobody cried enough. So the girl that was like second to last, that said, this is the reason we have behaviors, this is the reason we get suspended, this is the reason. But she also talked not just about siblings, but she says in her last statement, I considered that kind of a warning to us. Like, this is what's going to happen. So one of her statements was that when they're not connected. And to me, that's not just about siblings, but it's about family. It's not just about the family that we see on paper that they belong to, but it's the people that they have connections with. Hey, Jared, how do I make it go forward?
We have a couple of chat comments. Katie says, I think we sometimes forget that these kids sometimes have stronger relationships with their siblings than with their parents. And being separated from their siblings is a bigger loss. And Nancy says, to hear that they feel they don't belong or the feeling of losing everything is hard.
Is that it from Zoom?
Yes, that's all on Zoom.
So I agree with all of those comments. And I think it's something that we in our advocacy kind of take advantage of. We assume that somebody else is taking care of that. We assume that CPS or the foster parents or somebody else involved in the team is making sure that these kids have contact. I'm going to call on you, Amy.
Okay.
Because you talked about you have siblings right now that are in different kinship placements.
Correct.
Do they talk to each other?
Yes, and they see each other every other week, and both of their placements are really good about getting them together for birthday parties, play dates. They went to air jump or whatever one of those places was a few weekends ago.
Right. That's amazing.
It is amazing.
The majority of us that have worked other cases can't tell that same story. We can't say the same thing for our kids. Keely's sitting here, and I didn't want to really put her on the spot, but she's got a big group of kids right now that they range in ages. And because of confidentiality, I'm not really going to talk specifics, but it's a big sibling group, and they love each other dearly. And it has been a fight to keep all those kids together. But it is, I think that eventually it will be something that will change their outcome, despite anything new.
Mm-hmm.
But the older kids take care of the little kids. I currently have a group of 3 girls. The oldest child was the parent to her little sisters. And thankfully, they are placed together, which puts her in the big sister role, right? But how do you change a child from going to parent to big sister? What I've preached to her, what her foster parent, she thankfully has a wonderful foster parent. What we have tried to instill in her is that you are a kid. She is not your responsibility. Her diapers are not your responsibility. Her feeding, her bedtime is not your responsibility. Be a sister. Go play. Don't take care of the mom responsibilities or the parent responsibilities. We see that in a lot of our kids. And when you hear these kids talk, you heard some of that role reversal also. But what else are they going to do in the situations that they lived in? They're protectors. They're protecting their siblings. They're making sure that their siblings' needs were being met. Zoom.
Stella says, my child is not where he can talk with his sister. He takes it very hard and said that the one person he was responsible for, and he can't even see her. There are reasons he cannot speak with her at this time. It does not help his feelings. Big, huge connection loss.
It is. And that's not just one story. We have hundreds of stories like that. We have to make sure that contact can be safe and everybody's protected. But at the same time, you have to think about, what did these kids say? What was important to them?
We have Debbie, who says that she had a case like that, and since she was a cost for both the children, she would go and pick them each up at their placements to spend the day with them both. This is also what they asked for.
Right. Is Sherry Priest on Zoom?
I don't see her. No.
I happen to know a little bit about different specific stories of kids. And Sherry has a sibling group that are not placed together. One is a teenage girl, and she has siblings. Her advocate, the question that she gets every single time she talks to her is, when can I go see my brothers? When can I talk to my brothers? Because Sherry is the one that's facilitated that. She goes and picks up the teenager and takes her to go visit her siblings. And they usually do something together or hang out at a park or just whatever. Because it's the same CASA for all the kids. So since nobody else is doing it, she took it upon herself to make sure that that connection was still there.
But Amy, I did that for 3 years. And now they're so far apart, you can't do that. I mean, it's an impossible.
Right. Well, that's when, and like I said, every family is different. Every sibling set is different. But what's wrong with letters? What's wrong with phone calls? What's wrong with video calls?
Yeah, and I've asked for phone calls. Letters, they can do, but they don't. Letters is not something that boys like to do.
You never know until you try.
I have tried, believe you me.
Johnny?
Oh, I was just going to say, I have an advocate that she has 3 kiddos, and the middle one and the youngest one have a pretty good connection. None of them are in the same placement for various reasons. And although they will probably never be in the same placement or adopted together, she is making sure that these 2 that have a connection maintain that. And she drives 150 something miles every month, picks one up, goes gets the other one. They do something all day just for that, maintain that connection. And CPS wouldn't be doing it, hasn't, no, they didn't.
That's amazing. I mean, I go back to Amy's family where, I mean, your kids are incredibly fortunate to be able to have those experiences. You think back to your own childhood and the events in your childhood, growing up however you did, what are your fondest memories? They're usually going to be things like birthday parties, vacations, things like that you did. If I asked all of you, what is the most important thing in your life? What are you going to say?
Family.
Family. You're all grown adults. These are kids, and they have nothing but family. And we need to be working to make sure that they have those connections, whether it's a brother and sister or a cousin. You think about you growing up in your young lives, who was important to you? That's not a rhetorical question. I want to know.
My grandpa.
Your grandfather?
He was the closest one to me. But see, being the eldest of 7, I was actually everybody's mother. Okay. So I was not that close to my siblings. One brother, and the others are more like my kids.
Katie, you had somebody.
Oh, all of my grandparents I was really close to, and then my older brother. My younger siblings, not so much, because like my mom started working about the time that I had younger siblings, and so I became the full-time babysitter, the mother figure to them. So I was like helping raise them, so we never really didn't have that same connection as me and my older brother had.
Miss Priscilla, you've been around the block.
True.
Who was important in your life growing up?
I would guess it would be my mother and father. I had no brothers or sisters, and I wasn't close to cousins. Some of my cousins lived in the same town that I lived in, but we maybe saw each other once a year. It wasn't a close family, but I would say that my mother and father were always close to me.
As I was preparing to do this presentation, it's kind of where you turn it on yourself and you think about your own life and your own kids and my two daughters. And I was telling Johnny earlier this morning, I really got to thinking about it last night. And my girls are both teenagers now. And I thought about if somebody came in and plucked them up and dropped them somewhere else separately, what I told Johnny is my 16-year-old would be glad to be rid of her sister for a little while. But eventually, I know that would wear out. But the fact that even if their mom and dad if my husband and I got taken away from them, I look at who my kids are close to. I mean, we have a spider web of people. My youngest daughter wants to be a chef and she loves to cook. And so she spends time with one of her all her grandmothers, but one aunt in particular, Aunt KK, and they both get very excited to hang out together because that's all they do is cook together all day. It may be boring to you, Jean, but like my kid loves it.
No,
and
I hated cooking, still do.
And her aunt, who's older and retired, absolutely can't wait to go to the grocery store and buy all the supplies that they need. And you think about these kids, and while our CASA kids have lived in chaos and may not have somebody like Aunt KK that really took time with them, I want our job as their advocates to find someone to make those connections with those kids. So how do you do that? Let's hear it.
All right, so this is from Ed. Unfortunately, I have one who will not be able to see the siblings due to the nature of the case. The child also has severed parental relationship. So this child is alone except with a CASA volunteer in temporary residence in an institutional setting. My question is this: what are the options when the children turn 18? Is the court approved separation forever?
No.
No. Okay.
I can't. If you can hear me, I hope you can. We can talk about your specifics later. Katie's already been in my office this morning talking about that child in particular. So that brings with it a whole set of its own issues. And that's like I said earlier, no two families are alike, no two sibling sets are alike. They're all different. They all have their own set of baggage that they carry with them, right? So how do we unpack it? What do we do as their advocates? What I want to really encourage you all to do is sit down with your kids and start asking questions. Who was your favorite person to talk to? Not just now, but when you were 7, when you were 12, who was your favorite person to talk to? When you had a problem, who did you go to? Was it the school counselor? Did you have a favorite teacher? Who did you visit at holidays? And I mean, get specific, because what holiday is important to you may not be important to them. What holidays are important to my family, where we have traditions, may not be the same as Victoria's. Everybody's very different. You think about, and I've used this example over and over my whole career because it really hit home to me when I was very early on. What you have, Miss Priscilla, at your house for Christmas meal may be the same thing. It may be green bean casserole and all the Southern favorites, but I guarantee you it does not taste like the same green bean casserole that I have at my house.
That's right.
And how much comfort do we take into knowing exactly what it's going to look like, what it's going to taste like, who made it? Because in your families, don't you have the same people that bring the same things every year? Like that's your assignment. The green bean casserole is your assignment. The mashed potatoes are Uncle Rack. The stuffing is Aunt KK. Everybody has their own assignments, but nothing that you eat in a comforting setting like that at your house within your family tastes like anybody else's. One of those girls on that sibling thing said, even though it's their home, they're comfortable there, I'm not. It's not my comfort zone. She talked about still being uncomfortable when other people in other people's homes. She related it all to her siblings, but there's little things like food. I mean, how many of us find comfort in food? What was your kid's favorite thing to eat? What was their favorite cereal? What did they eat for breakfast? Little things like that can help bring them connections to their family. Even if, it's Cocoa Krispies that they ate every day, they may not have had it since they were at home, but they love it. Ask the questions. That's up to us. Ask the questions. One of the big things that you need to ask is who visited you? Who visited your home? Who was part of your family? You can find out a lot of things that way because who's asking those questions? Nobody. You need to find people that were involved in this child's life. Go back to, you can even use my story of my two girls. Like, who is important in their life? If you take the parents away, who's still important in their life? And if they were in a foster home with no contact with anybody, who could we be advocating for them to have contact with? What can you do as their advocate to help them make connections? One of the things that you need to consider is how helpful and healing relationships are for our kids. We talk all the time in our office about how resilient. Oh, well, they're resilient. They'll make it through this crisis. Yeah.
So we have something from Stella, and they said, I set a tradition with my kids to let them pick their Christmas cookie. I bake them and take them with the presents. They remember what they had every year. My child has been moved too much to have these connections.
That's not true. Stella and I don't often disagree, but I'll disagree with her on this one. Just because he's been moved too much doesn't mean that we can't find a connection for him. However, he's a teenage boy with sometimes a chip on his shoulder, and so attitudes come into play. But if there's somebody from his past that we could dig up, I'm going to tell you to shake the tree. Do you know what I mean by that? Shake the tree. That's what these questions are about. Shake the tree. See what falls out of it. Is there a family member that nobody heard of? I will tell you, in my 24 years of experience, there have been numerous times that we've come to the absolute end of the case and said, these kids have no place to go. They have no permanent home. We don't know what their future is going to look like. And somebody beats the trees, shakes the trees, beats the bushes, and a relative falls out, and we get a happy ending.
So Katie made a really good point. She said, and to ask them the brands of the foods they love too. They may say mac and cheese, but what they really mean is the kind from Walmart, not necessarily the fancy homemade kind.
That's it. You want to tell your story? Tell your mac and cheese story, Johnny.
I think it was at the CASA conference, and there was a young girl who was in foster care her whole life. And the one thing that she always recognized when she went into her different placements was the blue box of Kraft macaroni and cheese. And so that was comfort to her because it did taste the same. It doesn't taste the same as Walmart macaroni and cheese, and it doesn't taste the same as homemade macaroni and cheese, but the Kraft always tasted the same.
And so that was a comfort that she could take from placement to placement to placement the whole way with her. And even though it's a box of mac and cheese, it's something that brought her comfort and security. It's not just about people. Connections can be more than just people. And it also connects her to her original family, because that's a memory that she has. That's the memory that she had with her family in her kitchen, making that Kraft macaroni and cheese. And for her to go from home to home and know that it tastes the same everywhere, it's a reminder of that comfort that she had with her own family. So you think about when you were sick or recovering from a surgery, or I don't know, upset and depressed about something, sad. What brought you comfort?
When I was a little girl, if we were sick, we always got a new coloring book and a set of crayons, a new box of crayons.
That's an awesome idea.
I still want a new coloring book and a new box of crayons. I could lay in bed and color.
You just post it and you'll be sure you get that.
Okay.
But you think about who was around you. If you were as a kid, what about now as an adult? When you get upset about something or you are sick, I personally want to be left alone. I don't want people hovering over me. I just want to sleep and recover. But I want to be at home, sleeping on my couch with my remote, and our kids, and you think about how did you heal from whatever illness you had or whatever sadness you had? It was the comfort of your own little security. Is it a blanket? Is it a pillow that you love? When you go traveling, what do you take with you?
Pillow, blanket.
You take your own pillow. A lot of people do take their own pillows and blankets. These kids probably didn't get to take that.
No, it gets left behind even when they move from one foster home to the other. They don't.
Right? We have at our children's room here, there are plenty of blankets. Encourage your kids to have possessions that they call their own, and make sure if they get moved that they take them with them. It's very sad to feel as though you're plucked from one place into another, and everything you had at that first place, you don't have anymore. Nothing. Now, a lot of our kids complain about they lose their electronics. Well, that's a privilege. But your pants, your shirts, your favorite tennis shoes, your favorite hat, those are just clothing items. Why can't we make sure, tell your CPS worker that's moving your kid, hey, make sure you grab their hat. Make sure you grab their bear or their favorite blanket. Better yet, we have some bags and backpacks. Also, take your CPS worker a bag so that they don't put their stuff in a trash bag. How would that make you feel? It's trash. That's what you put trash in.
Yeah.
So what it says to those kids, and I know that it's handy. I used to be an investigator. I know that it's very easy to just grab one and start stuffing. But our kids mean more than that. And they need to know that you think more of them, that their CPS workers that are doing the moving think more of them than they're just trash. Anything? Okay. Every family, and this is kind of what I've already been saying, every family is unique, complex, and it has its own challenges. Anybody that's a CASA and has worked a case knows that our cases can be challenging. But those challenges in each family can be overcome. We can rebuild families. And the Texas law says that our job as advocates for our kids is to reunify families. Whether that means with their parents, if the parents are not safe and appropriate, then it needs to be with other family, which is what? Kinship. It doesn't have to be blood relatives. It could be great Aunt Sally that lived down the road and our kid used to go get cookies from when he was hungry. But if we don't know that, if we didn't ask those questions, how would we know who great Aunt Sally is? We need to be asking the questions. The second thing I want to talk about when it comes to families is bias. So, unfortunately, about a year ago, there was a House representative down around Houston that filed a bill with a legislative session to get rid of CASA. It was not widely publicized, and we were all very fortunate. We have a lot of great legal representatives down in Austin that really went to bat for all of us and what you do, because it's important. But one of the things that he claimed was that we are biased towards family. Even though the law says that our job is to put families back together. Why do they think that though? All of us walk into a home and have an immediate decision in our head about what we see as the future. Is this good enough? Is there enough here? Is it nice enough? A lot of those things do not matter when it comes to kinship. Is it safe? And will the children's needs be met? Those are your two most important questions. But on the flip side, what do they get? They get a sense of belonging. They get a sense of family. They get all of these things that are very deep dive emotional connections. So you think about what are your biases and make sure that when you're out doing your advocacy work, that you're not carrying those with you. Leave them in the car. Just because one of you, maybe Jean, is OCD and doesn't like to have dirty dishes in the sink, you know, that's not something to complain about.
I got dirty dishes in that sink.
It's just an example.
Yeah.
But you understand what I'm saying? What I call clean at my house is not probably what you call clean at your house. There's a dog at my house, and I promise you, if you sit down on the right couch, you're going to get up with dog hair, especially on your black pants. Don't wear black to my house.
Only wear black to my house.
See, I mean, but things like that should be overlooked. We should be able to check our own biases when we're looking at family to know what are the important parts of this potential placement or potential connection for these children. Is it safe? Are they protected? And will their needs be met? One of the things that you all know is time is ticking. This is our legal timeline of our case. It starts at the beginning when the child is removed from the home. If you come down and look, we're 180 days in. Then we have our permanency hearing and then our trial. 12 months. 12 months is what we get. That's how long we have to look and find connections for these kids. We need to be looking constantly. We don't need to wait till the last minute. Our parents are always plan A. We want to get kids back with parents, but you need to have a plan B and options all the time. We need to have a backup plan for these kids' future.
C and D.
Sometimes you need 3 other plans.
That's right.
But how many times have you sat down with a kid and talked about their future and they don't know what their future is? They don't know when the next placement is going to be. They don't know when's the next time they're going to see their family. They don't know when is the next time they're going to have contact with their siblings. They don't know when's the next time they're going to see you or their caseworker, or if the caseworker is going to be the same person. We need to be building these blocks for these kids. So what else can you do? How can you make a difference? I'm going to tell you to ask the questions. Take the time. If you think about the people that were important to you as a child, I guarantee you that every single person that you think of sat down and took time with you. That's something that these kids don't have. You heard one of them talk about the people that are paid to take care of us, not just foster parents, but the caseworkers. Make the phone calls. If you find somebody, an old teacher that a kid loved, find the teacher. Hunt the teacher down. Call the teacher.
So how do you ask the questions to the people? How, when you make those calls and maintaining confidentiality, you can't, if you're not supposed to stay there. She's a step ahead.
I'm a step ahead of you, Katie. This is the hardest part. This is your hurdle. We cannot share information. We are going out, we're hunting. We're hunting and gathering, but we're not the ones with the arrow. So we can't share the kid's story. The only way that you are going to be able to make a connection is if you find the teacher, you make contact with the teacher, and the teacher says, "Who are you calling me about?" And you say, "I'm calling you about Johnny Smith. He used to be in your 2nd grade. He told me about you, and I'm curious if you would be interested in being part of his life." That's it. And then you hear everything from her because she's going to talk about Johnny. And she's going to tell you what she remembers about Johnny and say, "Oh my gosh, we have so many teachers." I don't know if there's any retired teachers on Zoom that come in to be CASAs because they had kids removed out of their classroom and they never knew what happened to them. And they wanted to know, as a CASA, how do we follow them and make sure that those kids are okay later? Because they don't know. You can't share the child's name. You can't share who you are and what your relationship is to the child. You have to give them something. You can't say, "Oh, I'm calling you about a kindergartner you had 6 years ago that fell in love with you." I mean, that's a stretch, first of all. But you understand, you have to give the child's name and say, "I'm their CASA advocate. Johnny told me about you. He loved you. He still thinks about you. Would you be interested in being a part of his life?" And go from there. You can't start talking about, "Well, Johnny was removed because of drugs and alcohol and domestic violence." You cannot go into all that. That's his story to share, not yours. But if you can make that connection and he makes that decision, whether or not he shares that story. Any questions about confidentiality? Because we cannot be sharing stories that aren't ours. No, great. The last thing I want to do is give you guys a little bit of motivation. What if you do all this work and you can't find anybody? What if you do all of this work and figure out that nobody in this child's life is going to really be a connection? What if they're not positive people? What if they are not encouraging? What can you do? You can be the connection. You can be a connection that they need. So there's your motivation. You have to turn it up.
When I was 6 years old, my father died of a heroin overdose, leaving my drug-addicted mother alone with 6 children under the age of 7. Shortly after my mother told my siblings and me the news about our father.
Can you turn the sound up a little?
We are. Sorry, everybody. I'm turning up the sound, and I'm just going to go ahead and start it over, actually.
She disappeared. She abandoned us.
There we go.
Good evening. When I was 6 years old, my father died of a heroin overdose, leaving my drug-addicted mother alone with 6 children under the age of 7. Shortly after my mother told my siblings and me the news about our father, she disappeared. She abandoned us. Our parents had recently moved all of us children out to California from Massachusetts. So we had absolutely no family in the area. We were alone. As a result, my 5 siblings and I became dependents of the court. One of my most vivid memories from my childhood is the day that the judge ordered that my sisters and I be separated from our brothers. My sisters and I sat in court holding hands and crying because we knew that the family we had worked so hard to protect was going to be ripped apart and there was nothing we could do to stop it. Had we been given the opportunity to speak, the judge would have learned that we had taken care of our brothers since their birth and were immensely invested in their lives. But instead, we were overlooked and disregarded because we were small children. In the blink of an eye, life as we knew it changed drastically. Our brothers were carried out of the courtroom, crying and calling for us, and we were not given an opportunity to comfort them or even say goodbye. It was a traumatizing experience, and I was left feeling scared and abandoned in the very system that was responsible for protecting me. From the age of 6 to 18, my sisters and I were raised in foster care. Each day presented a new struggle, whether that meant facing adversity or literally fighting for acceptance. This is where my CASA volunteer became so instrumental to my happiness as a child. It wasn't until I got to meet and get to know my CASA volunteer that I finally felt like I had someone in my corner, an ally, someone who would stand up for me and be my voice and would fight for my rights. He was the first person to actually ask my sisters and I what we wanted to see happen with our family, and he actually worked hard to make those things happen. He gave us hope. The only reason my sisters and I were able to visit our biological brothers in Sonoma County was because my CASA volunteer went out of his way to drive us back and forth to those visits. He went out of his way to make sure that we could see our brothers. And if it wasn't for him, we would have never seen our brothers at all. He even arranged visits with our biological mother when her whereabouts were known. When we were out with him, he allowed us to have fun and be kids. which is something we seldom have the luxury of doing. The time I spent with my CASA volunteer provided me with a distraction from the chaos that characterized my life. But he also enabled me to finally feel like I wasn't alone in the foster care system. I wouldn't say I was a perfect adolescent, but I always did well in school because that was the one aspect of my life that only I could control. When I was a senior in high school, I decided I wanted to go to UC Berkeley for college. I remember sitting down with my guidance counselor and telling her that that was my goal. And she looked at me and told me that I needed to be realistic. She said that I needed to stick to applying to state schools and community colleges because that was the only schools I would get into. But my CASA volunteer encouraged me to follow my dreams and to apply to whatever schools I wanted, and that's what I did. My CASA volunteer even helped me with the college application process. He helped me find scholarships for college. I got accepted to UC Berkeley and graduated 4 years later with a bachelor's in legal studies. I always knew I wanted to be an attorney, probably as a result of spending so much time in court as a child. And so I eventually applied to law school. In 2010, I got accepted to Golden Gate University School of Law in San Francisco. And in May 2013, I graduated in the top 20% of my class. I also recently found out that I passed the bar on my first try. Like most foster children, I had many obstacles and hardships growing up. Why was I able to beat the odds? Well, I had a foster mother and a CASA volunteer who believed in me and who constantly told me that I could do anything I set my heart to. They taught me to believe in myself. Without their support, constant encouragement, and love, I might have been just another statistic. I would like to thank Art Thomas, my CASA volunteer. He has been there for me every step of the way, from high school to my college graduation, to my law school graduation, and he's here with me tonight. Thank you.